Now, I wouldn't call myself a pyromaniac by any means, but I do think there's something really intriguing about watching a good fire. This fire in particular was in Forest Park, which I realize may seem alarming to see without context, but I promise it was all under control. Literally, this is called controlled or prescribed burning.
Controlled burns is basically emanating a historical practice that was used either by Native Americans or was just something that naturally occurred in our environment. In Missouri, most of our habitats have evolved with fire. And if you take fire out of that, that means that the habitats that we really know as our healthy, vibrant, diverse habitats in Missouri are just not really able to exist.
Amy Witt, park ecologist at Forest Park Forever, has led these burns in the park for the past 12 years. She explains the benefits of burning as opposed to mowing or other chemical methods of land management are that the fire takes out the invasive species while optimizing the soil or seedbed for new native plant growth. Seems simple enough to just light a bunch of vegetation on fire, but there are, of course, very specific conditions needed for these burns.
Prescribed fire is called prescribed because essentially you have a prescription. In the fact that you only burn if the wind is coming from certain directions, if the humidity is within a certain range, if the mixing height, meaning that how high the air has to go before it starts to mix and move away, if that's a certain level, you have the Haynes index, the ventilation.
So you get the idea. It's very rare to meet all of the criteria in order to have a safe and successful burn, especially considering Forest Park is in the middle of a city and has to consider the major landmarks and institutions surrounding it. And while many of the qualifications are up to Mother Nature, there are also many man-made safety measures. Leaf blowing and spraying water helps deter the fire from catching trees.
Sometimes we even high mow a site, so if a site doesn't have that much fuel or if it has really high fuel, sometimes we'll go in and high mow it so that we won't scorch anything more than what we want. And some of that is for safety, and some of that is also just, we planted some beautiful oaks in here. Ooh. That was a nice one. We planted some oaks in here, and we want them to survive. Whenever we're burning, we're almost always followed by some sort of hawk. Maybe there's going to be a critter that gets spooked and is popping out, but also there's going to be dead insects that are going to be, or dead rodents that are going to be in the areas that were burned. And so you'll even see things such as like hundreds of robins just foraging for those crispy insects after a burn.
So there you have it, an example of how fire benefits the circle of life. And as Amy said, you can see how fires have shaped our natural landscape. For example, most of our forest regions are predominantly made up of oak and hickory trees, as they are the most fire-tolerant species. Forest Park even started implementing the burn process into their own woodlands and forests.
And that's the one that really, I think, people are surprised by. A lot of people think of fire as like the most imminent destruction part of prescribed fires, but actually like liability comes from smoke.
In fact, smoke and fire liability were major obstacles for landowners in Missouri up until a couple of years ago. A recent revision to the law was made to limit the liability of damages when responsibly practicing prescribed burns. This change was made because of the increased awareness of the benefits this process has to offer.
The main thing is that like fire can be used in a meaningful way intentionally. And I know a lot of people think of wildfires whenever they think of fire. Like that is also a scenario that is very impactful and is happening across the United States. However, in a lot of states, particularly in the Midwest, if we don't use fires, then we are intentionally harming our environment and intentionally harming the different ecosystems that we have.
For Living St. Louis, I'm Brooke Butler.